everyone. First of all, thanks Gaurav and thanks Vishal for this opportunity. So I'm just trying to figure out how to put this on full screen right now. Can you guys see the PPT?
Yeah, we can see. You have to first put it to full screen, then share. There are two separate windows for full screen as well as.
Yeah, just give me a second. I'm just trying to figure that out.
There's F5. F5 will make it full screen.
Not on a Mac apparently.
Oh, not on a Mac. Okay. There is a button on the bottom, just next to the minus.
Wait. I think I got it. It's over
Yeah.
here.
Okay. Yeah.
Enter full screen.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
See it now?
No. So you have to reshare. Reshare again.
Okay.
The full screen one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stop sharing. Just stop sharing from Zoom.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then reshare. When you hit the share, you will get option to share the full screen one.
Yeah. Okay. I think you should be able to see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. Once again, just to start off, thanks for this opportunity. So,
sorry, still we cannot see the full screen. Okay, maybe go to the next slide. Let me share from our side then.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let me share from our side.
Make more sense.
Okay, just a sec. So that we stay consistent.
What about now? Can you see it now?
Okay. Yeah. Now I can see. Now we can see. Okay. Or we can do that. This is fine. I think this is still okay.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, just to move it along, we're Fight Forecaster. We're a percentage-based prediction app for MMA, very similar to the fantasy sports that are run on cricket by Dream 11 and for Western audiences by FanDuel and DraftKings. So we're targeting a very niche sport called mixed martial arts, which is a rapidly rising sport all over the world. There are two reasons for targeting. One is, of course, a personal reason that I've been a fan for many years now. And the other bigger reason is I feel it's the fastest growing global sport. And it's the only sport which is growing on a global basis. So if you take cricket, for example, there's just a handful of countries that play it. Football is already followed by a number of countries, but it's not growing at the pace it was. It's already an established sport. And most Western sports such as basketball and rugby are very limited geographically. So MMA is the first sport which is truly global. And we feel that while the fantasy sports model has been very successful in the other sports by larger unicorns, which I'll address later in the presentation, there is no, as of yet, there is no fantasy sport which is exclusively dedicated to MMA and the niceties of it. So can you see the problem slide?
Yes.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, this is the thing. The total addressable market is well over 10 million users currently, but that number is rapidly growing, and the market is sort of dominated by a number of promotions. So the biggest promotion by a long way is the Ultimate Fighting Championship in the UFC, which is promoted by big firms such as KKR and IMG WME. On the eastern side of the world, we have one championship which is heavily backed by the Singaporean government, and the fund Temasek. But yeah, apart from these two, there are a number of other smaller promotions which are geographically located in different places. There's one in Russia, there's one in Poland, and all of these are also quickly and rapidly rising promotions. It'll be interesting landscape evolves in the years to come. So the solution, as I mentioned, is since we already have fantasy sports applications which are tailored to those sports, but MMA is a very distinct sport. It's based on martial arts, and the persona, the kind of people that are attracted to MMA have a completely different outlook to it. They're not as statistically oriented in terms of things like the number of significant strikes, because in this sport, the thing can change very quickly. So it's the key elements and the results which are of importance. And it's also a very socially conducive sport. Most of my user base comes of Twitter, which from which the users are it's a global user base, and it's a self-organizing and organically growing user base. I also wanted to mention that the Fight Forecaster app is a very low budget app compared to how most other fantasy sports are organized. Just as a side note, most other fantasy sports invest heavily on marketing, but they also invest heavily in sports journalism and a gathering of statistics. That is not required for the operation of Fight Forecaster, as a very few statistics are actually required for the operation of the app. While just to harp on this point, statistics are obviously very important from the user's perspective, but not so much from the fantasy sport operator's perspective, and that's what allows us to operate at a very low budget. So this is the customer acquisition strategy, which really is the key engine to the growth of the startup, as it is for any fantasy sport. Um, Digital marketing and some amount of word of mouth will be the core. So obviously, this will tie in very well with my requirements, which I'll get to in a while. Influencer marketing is also obviously very important, but it's the right influencers, not just any influencers. And we have a very specific kind of influencers within the MMA sphere. Podcasting and content marketing, these are standard things. So the marketing and the customer acquisition is probably going to be the moat of the startup. And this first mover advantage will hopefully also offer us some kind of a competitive advantage. There's a very standard revenue model which is utilized by all fantasy sport operators in the industry, which is essentially which is a pay-to-play model, where everybody puts in a fixed amount of money, which is collected in an escrow account, and from that pool, prizes are awarded to the users depending upon how skillfully they play the game, and a certain percentage of the pool, referred to as a rake percentage, is what the fantasy sport operator takes for himself. It's usually between 10 to 15% of the total pool. Ad revenue is also an option, but it is not the go-to option, and it will be done only if suitable. So a few operators have tried the ad revenue model, and it has not worked out for them in the past. But the pay-to-play model is far more suitable, and it's been tried and tested over the last decade. Competitors, there are actually many competitors, but I've just listed the three big ones. FanDuel and DraftKings are the two big ones in the US. They have already encroached upon the MMA space, and they have official sponsorship agreements with some of the larger organizations. Fortunately, unfortunately, as I mentioned in the beginning, the way they've drafted the games is very similar to how they've drafted it for, say, football or for any other sport, where in essence you're selecting a lineup and then your performance is on the base of the lineup rather than based on the individual performances of the individual fights, the individual events. Dream 11 is not yet into the space, but I felt that it's important to list them as a potential competitor simply because of the size that they have achieved. While they don't officially operate in the MMA space, they do sponsor the broadcast of a few events, notably the One Championship ones. Uh, the team is just me at the moment. I'm in conversation with a number of people, both nationally and internationally, to join. Uh, yeah, and this presentation is part of the efforts to do that. So this is the recent past, and we don't have too much of a past to speak of. We launched on the Play Store in July. The launch on iOS happened subsequently in August. And recently we cracked over 150 plus weekly active users, which is a pretty high percentage rate. Weekly active users is the most important metric for us as a startup, because these events happen week on week, and yeah, well, most people would prefer to record their forecasts and record their predictions once during a week. It's unlikely that they're going to come back to it on a day-to-day basis. This is just to give you a sort of pictorial representation of our user base. As you can see, the distribution has happened quite successfully so far within a short period of time. Uh, two, a few big markets which are unfortunately not yet touched would be Russia, China, and Brazil. These are places where MMA has already gained a foothold and is growing and has grown to a significant extent. Uh, but uh, but most importantly, US, which is the biggest market for the sport in the world and the biggest market for almost anything, has had some amount of representation. And India, of course, has had some amount of representation in this because we've been founded here and we have a lot of connections here. We've been prominently featured in some of the Indian publications that are dedicated to mixed martial arts. And yeah, so this is my ask. I probably should have put the chief marketing officer before the chief technical officer because the chief marketing officer may be the most important role within the company. As I mentioned before, the chief technical officer is very important because it's important that the app runs smoothly without glitches, without any errors. Fans can sometimes, users can sometimes be unforgiving. Early users, in this case at least, are surprisingly tolerant. Uh, but as we scale up, that is something that would be required to be kept at a minimal. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you once again for allowing me to share this platform.